The shrill ring of the telephone cuts through the morning silence. It is Marcus. My blood runs cold. "Mom!" His voice cracks, strained, exhausted. "I'm sorry about last night. Zaraya was... She was stressed about the dinner party. She didn't mean what she said." I clench my jaw. Even now, he makes excuses for her. She summoned security to have me removed from my grandson's birthday dinner. "Marcus, there was no security." "Mom, she was just emotional." She humiliated me in front of 20 people. A long pause hangs in the air. "I know. I should have said something. I'm sorry." His voice hitches slightly. "But you know how she gets when she's planning these events. Everything has to be perfect. Perfect. As if my very presence somehow tainted their perfect lives." "I need some time to think," I tell him, my voice flat. "Of course, but Mom, maybe next time if you could dress up a little more. You know how important appearances are to Zaraya's friends." After I hang up, I sit in silence for a long time. My son, my gentle, kind son, who used to defend injured birds and give his lunch money to classmates who forgot theirs, is asking me to change who I am to accommodate his wife's cruelty. By 8 o'clock, the office is bustling with activity. I watch through my window as employees file into the building, riding elevators to their respective floors, settling into their workdays. Somewhere among them is Zaraya, probably complaining to colleagues about her difficult mother-in-law who doesn't know her place. I buzz my assistant, Helen. She's been with me for 15 years, starting as a secretary and working her way up to executive assistant. She's also 62 years old. Exactly the kind of employee Zaraya seems to enjoy targeting. "Helen, I need you to pull some personnel files for me, quietly." "Of course. Which employees?" "Start with the digital campaigns division. I want to see everything. Performance reviews, project reports, internal communications. And Helen, I especially want to see any records involving interactions with older staff members." Helen pauses. She's worked with me long enough to recognize when something is brewing. "Should I ask what this is about?" "Not yet, but I have a feeling we're going to be making some changes around here." An hour later, Helen returns with a stack of files that confirms my worst fears. Zaraya's division has the highest turnover rate in the company, specifically among employees over 50. Exit interviews reveal a pattern of complaints about ageist attitudes and a hostile work environment, but somehow these never made it to my desk. I find records of Zaraya's emails printed out and filed according to company policy. One exchange with a colleague makes my hands shake with anger. "Can you believe they're making me work with Janet on the Morrison project? The woman can barely operate a smartphone. Why do we keep these dinosaurs around? They're just taking up space that could go to people who actually understand the modern workplace." The Morrison project, a campaign for a new client that Zaraya had claimed credit for, earning herself a substantial bonus. Janet Rodriguez, the 63-year-old custodial supervisor who'd been transferred to nights, had developed the initial concept during a brainstorming session that included support staff. I pick up my phone and dial extension 4247, Human Resources. Jennifer speaking. "Jennifer, this is Sherry Morrison. I need to see you in my office immediately and bring the organizational chart for the digital campaigns division." 20 minutes later, Jennifer sits across from my desk, her face pale as I outline what I've discovered. "Mrs. Morrison, I had no idea the situation was this extensive. Some of these complaints should have been escalated to your office immediately." "They should have been," I agree, but they weren't. Which tells me we have more problems than just one employee. However, right now, I want to focus on Zaraya Mitchell Morrison. Jennifer nods nervously. "What would you like me to do?" I lean forward, my decision crystallizing. I want her transferred. Immediately. Today. To which department? I think about Janet Rodriguez working the night shift because Zaraya found her inconvenient. I think about Margaret Chen, publicly humiliated for using methods that had worked successfully for decades. I think about Robert Williams, forced to work overtime on personal projects while being called slow and outdated. Food services, dishwashing. Jennifer's eyes widen. Mrs. Morrison, that's quite a significant demotion. She'll certainly file a grievance. Let her. Tell her it's part of a new company initiative to have management personnel understand all aspects of our operation. Tell her it's temporary, pending restructuring of her division. And if she refuses? I smile, but there's no warmth in it. Then she can find employment elsewhere. I'm sure there are plenty of companies that would appreciate her dynamic personality. After Jennifer leaves, I stand at my window, looking down at the street 42 floors below. People move like ants, each focused on their own small piece of the world, unaware of the larger forces shaping their days. My office door swings open. It is Jennifer, but behind her stands Zariah. Her face is red, her eyes blazing. "Mrs. Morrison," she begins, her voice trembling. "I demand to know why I've been reassigned to..." She trails off, unable to even speak the words. Dishwashing, I think, a small smile playing on my lips. "There's been a reassignment in staff," I say. "You will be in the kitchen as of now." "But I am an executive," Zariah says. "I am a marketing manager." "Not anymore," I say. "Do you know who I am?" Zariah asks. "I know exactly who you are," I say. "You are the new dishwasher." Zariah's eyes are wide, but then they narrow. "Marcus will not like this." "Marcus has nothing to do with this," I say. Zariah turns to Jennifer. "You will fix this." "I cannot," Jennifer says. "This is coming from the top." Zariah turns back to me. "Why are you doing this?" "You will find out," I say. "Now get to the kitchen." Zariah storms off, but then she pauses at the door. "This isn't over." "It's just beginning," I say. But then, as I watch Zariah walk away, I notice something. She's not walking toward the elevators that would take her to the kitchen. She's walking toward my office. What could she possibly be planning? The air in my office crackled. Zariah stood frozen. Her world was crumbling. I had watched her for days. She hadn't learned a thing. Tomorrow, Zariah would return to the basement. She would don the hairnet again. She would scrub dishes. She would work beside those she scorned. She would feel the sting of being devalued, all without knowing her tormentor was watching. I'd picked up my phone. I'd called the cafeteria manager. The plan was set. The Meridian Technologies basement cafeteria throbbed. Industrial dishwashers roared. Steam billowed from the sinks. Dishes clattered. It was honest work. Work that fueled the company. Work invisible to most. I stood in the service corridor. I wore a borrowed maintenance uniform. At 68, I blended in. My silver hair hid under a cap. A clipboard completed the disguise. Zariah had been there for 3 days. I watched through the window. She struggled with the spray nozzle. Her manicure was ruined. She wore the hairnet and apron. Her face was a mask of rage. Her co-workers gave her space. "This is ridiculous," she muttered to Maria. Maria, 55, had hands like leather. "I have a master's degree. I managed 7-figure campaigns. Now I'm washing dishes." Maria's voice cut like a knife. "You think this makes us less?" Zariah flushed. "That's not what I meant. I'm qualified for better." Janet Rodriguez, prepping vegetables, spoke. "We all are, honey." Janet was the woman Zariah had targeted, now on the night shift. Janet didn't know her tormentor was near. There's dignity in any honest work. Zariah rolled her eyes. Janet wasn't looking. Easy for her to say. She's probably done this her whole life. My jaw clenched. Even here, Zariah looked down. My phone buzzed. It was Marcus. "Mom?" Zariah's struggling at work, restructuring. She's stressed. "Dinner this weekend?" I typed back. "I'll think about it." But I knew. Zariah's cruelty wasn't new. It was part of her. On day 4, I moved closer. I entered during the lunch rush. Noise and chaos gave cover. I approached the dish pit. Zariah looked defeated. Her hair hung limp. Dark circles ringed her eyes. "Excuse me," I said, roughening my voice. "I need to clean the floor." Zaria barely glanced at me. Whatever, just don't get in my way. I mopped near her feet. I listened to her conversation with Luis. Luis was trying to help her. I don't understand this, Zaria complained. She scraped a plate too hard. That old witch in HR, she never liked me. Luis shook his head. Jennifer's fair. Maybe it's temporary. Temporary my ass, Zaria snapped. This is punishment. I don't know why. She gestured around the kitchen. Look at this place. Look at these people. I don't belong here. Hey, Luis said softly. They work hard. They're good people. Zaria laughed bitterly. Good people. Luis, wake up. These people couldn't make it anywhere else. They lack skills. They lack intelligence. I stopped mopping. My grip tightened. The kitchen noise faded. I stood in silence. That lady over there, Zaria continued. She nodded toward Janet. Probably never finished high school. And that woman with the accent, probably illegal. They should be grateful for any work. Luis looked uneasy. Zaria, that's not true. Zaria's voice rose. Some lead, some follow. Some create value, some are just maintenance. Just maintenance. The people who kept the company running. The people who allowed her to focus on important work. Less human? I mopped methodically. I listened to Zaria's commentary. She criticized Maria's English. She called Luis naive. She mocked Janet's appearance. The worst part, she said, rinsing plates, is my mother-in-law loves this. She's laughing in her apartment. Her successful daughter-in-law knocked down. My blood ran cold. Even here she blamed others. Your mother-in-law? Luis asked. That pathetic old woman. She thinks the world owes her. She came to my son's birthday dressed like she was going to a garage sale. Embarrassed my husband. I had to ask her to leave. She was the victim. She was wronged. No mention of security. No mention of humiliation. She protected her family. She sounds difficult, Luis said. She's a bitter old woman, jealous of what we've built. She did manual labor. She hates that her son married someone with class, someone with education. She wants to drag us down. Manual labor, like what she was doing now, like what those around her did with pride. I finished mopping. I started to leave. Zaria's voice stopped me. You know what's sick? My husband feels sorry for her. He thinks I should apologize for protecting our family. I heard Luis say, maybe you should talk to her. Family's important. Zaria's laugh was cold. Family? Real family doesn't look like they crawled out of a trailer park. Real family understands social boundaries. I reached the service corridor. My hands shook. I leaned against the wall. I removed the cap. 3 days of washing dishes, of seeing how others lived, of working with those she dismissed. She learned nothing. She doubled down. That evening, Marcus called. Mom, I'm worried. Zaria's job is getting to her. She's exhausted and angry. What does she say? I asked. She thinks someone is targeting her. Discrimination. Because she's young and successful. He paused. She wants to apologize. I almost laughed. Zaria needed allies. She needed someone to blame. Burning bridges wasn't strategic. Tell her I'm not ready, I said. Mom, please, she's struggling. Marcus, I said gently, has Zaria told you what her new job involves? Cross-training, learning the business. Cross-training, not washing dishes, not working with those she belittled. She couldn't tell her husband the truth. I see, I said. She's learning a lot. I sat in my apartment. I thought about Zaria. Tomorrow, I would reveal myself. Tomorrow, Zaria would learn. The pathetic old woman held her future. But first, I wanted to see her reaction when she realized everything had changed. I arrived early Friday. My decision was made. Zaria wasn't learning empathy. She was learning resentment. Helen looked up. She noted my determination.
Trembling.
What can I do for you, Mrs. Morrison?
Like a
Meeting. Zaria Mitchell Morrison. My office. 10 a.m. I paused.
Percussion.
Helen, main elevator. I want her to walk through the executive floor. At 10, Helen's voice. Mrs. Morrison, your 10 a.m. is here. Send her in. I faced the window, my back to the door. Footsteps on marble. Zariah's reflection in the glass. Tired, hair in a ponytail, casual clothes. Excuse me. Irritation in her voice. Someone wanted to see me about my transfer. I don't know why I'm on the executive floor. Mistake. I swiveled. Recognition dawned. Confusion to shock. Shock to horror. Hello, Zariah. Her mouth moved. No sound. You? What are you? How did you get here? My private entrance, like every morning. I gestured to the chair. Sit down. We have much to discuss. She remained standing. Disbelief, anger, fear, calculation. This is a joke. You're not. You can't be the CEO and founder of Meridian Technologies. I completed her thought. I'm afraid I am. For 35 years. Zariah sank into the chair. But at dinner, you said you worked for a cleaning company. I said I owned a business. You assumed. I leaned back. People see what they expect. She was quiet. Her mind raced. Her voice changed. Softer. Charm. Mrs. Morrison, I didn't know. If I had, I would have acted differently. Interesting. Your behavior was based on my social status. Her face flushed. That's not what I meant. What did you mean? She straightened. Different approach. Misunderstanding. Family dynamics are complicated. People say things they don't mean. So calling security was a heated moment. I was stressed. Everything had to be perfect. Your presence wasn't. I pulled up her file. Margaret Chen? The change of topic caught her off guard. Who? Margaret Chen, 61, accounting. You publicly humiliated her. Said she should step aside for someone modern. Zariah's eyes darted. No escape. Professional disagreement. Sometimes you must be direct. Robert Williams? Yet support. Overtime on personal projects. Said he couldn't keep up. I have high standards. Janet Rodriguez? Unprofessional because she couldn't accommodate your schedule. Transferred to night shift. Zariah's composure cracked. What does this have to do with anything? Legitimate workplace issues. I turned my screen. Complaints against her. 3 formal complaints about age discrimination in 18 months. Dismissed because your supervisor believed you were maintaining high standards. Because I was. Were you maintaining high standards when you told Louise that the people in the kitchen are there because they lack skills? The color drained. You were... That was you in the kitchen. Every day this week. Listening to you dismiss hardworking people. Watching you learn nothing except how to blame others. She stood abruptly, her mask gone. This is entrapment. You can't spy on employees. I can observe my company's culture. I found an employee who targets older workers, who believes social status determines worth, who lacks empathy. You're doing this because of the dinner. The accusation burst out. Personal revenge. I stood. I moved to the window. Do you know what I built this company on, Zariah? The idea that innovation comes from respecting every perspective, that wisdom has many forms, and that a person's value isn't determined by their age or background. I turned back to face her. You represent everything I've spent my career fighting against. A tense silence filled the air. So, what happens now? Her voice was barely audible. Are you going to fire me? That depends on you, Zariah. A flicker of hope ignited in her eyes. What do you mean? You have a choice. I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. You can continue working in the kitchen, learning what it means to be treated the way you've treated others. Maybe eventually you'll develop some understanding of how your actions affect people. I watched her carefully. And the other option, I continued, you can resign today. I'll provide a neutral reference that mentions your marketing skills without detailing the reasons for your departure. She stared at me. Her eyes darted back and forth. I could see her weighing her options. The gears were turning in her mind. Finally, she spoke. Her words revealed everything. This is blackmail. The accusation hung in the air. "You're using your position to force me out because I didn't know who you were. I'm giving you an opportunity to leave with your dignity intact." My voice was calm, controlled. "My dignity?" Her voice rose, laced with indignation. "You had me washing dishes for a week. You humiliated me. I gave you the same treatment you've given to employees under your supervision." I watched her carefully. "The difference is they had no choice. You do." Zariah moved toward the door. She stopped, turning back. Her face was twisted with anger. "Marcus will hear about this. He'll know what kind of person his mother really is. Marcus will hear the truth." I met her gaze. "Yes, he'll learn that his wife has been systematically bullying older employees and that she called security to remove his mother from his son's birthday party." She froze, her hand on the door handle. Her eyes widened. "He'll also learn," I continued, "that when given the opportunity to take responsibility for her actions and grow as a person, she chose to blame others and play the victim." "You're destroying my marriage." Her voice trembled. "Your marriage is not my responsibility, Zariah. Your character is." She stood there. Her chest was rising and falling with rapid breaths. When she spoke again, her voice was cold and calculated. "I choose the kitchen." A wave of disappointment washed over me. "I'll stay in the kitchen, and I'll prove that this is all about your petty revenge. Marcus will see through this eventually." I nodded slowly. "Very well. Report to the cafeteria Monday morning. Same time, same station." After she left, I sat back down at my desk. I felt older than my 68 years. I'd hoped that revealing the truth would shock her into self-reflection. I'd hoped she might choose to use this as an opportunity for growth. Instead, she'd chosen defiance and delusion. She would return to the kitchen not to learn, but to endure. She would paint herself as the victim of a vindictive old woman. She would never acknowledge that her current situation was the direct result of her own cruelty. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Mom, can we have lunch today? Zariah has something she wants to tell you." I looked at the message for a long time. I considered my response carefully. I already knew what Zariah wanted to tell me. She wanted to confess her identity. She wanted to leverage our family connection to escape the consequences of her actions. She wanted to turn Marcus against me by painting herself as the victim of my unreasonable expectations. But that conversation would come on my terms, not hers, and when it did, Marcus would learn some uncomfortable truths about the woman he'd married and the mother he'd failed to defend. I began to type. "I'm afraid I'm quite busy today. Perhaps another time." The reckoning was far from over. The call came on a Tuesday evening, 3 weeks after my confrontation with Zariah. The phone rang loudly. Marcus's voice was strained. It carried the weight of someone who'd finally been forced to see an uncomfortable truth. "Mom, we need to talk, all three of us." I set down my teacup. I noted the tremor in his voice. "About what specifically?" I asked calmly. "About Zariah's job situation, about what happened at Tommy's birthday, about everything." He paused. I could hear muffled voices in the background. Zariah coaching him, no doubt. "She told me who you really are. How do you feel about that?" A long silence followed. I could feel his confusion and anger. "I don't understand why you didn't tell me you owned the company where she works. You never asked what kind of business I owned, Marcus. You assumed, just like she did." "That's not the point, Mom. The point is that you've been manipulating her employment, punishing her because of personal family issues." I closed my eyes briefly. Even now, even knowing the truth, he was defending her. "Is that what she told you?" I asked, my voice carefully neutral. "She told me you've been making her wash dishes for weeks as some kind of revenge. That's not the mother I know." "Then perhaps you don't know me as well as you think, just like you don't know your wife as well as you think." "What's that supposed to mean?" His voice was sharp. "It means we should have this conversation in person. Tonight, my apartment, 8 o'clock. They arrived 15 minutes late. Zariah had clearly spent time preparing. Her hair was styled. Her makeup was perfect. Her clothing was carefully chosen to project an image of professional competence undermined by personal persecution. Marcus looked tired. He was caught between two women he was supposed to love, but clearly didn't understand. I served coffee in my small living room. It was the same modest space where I'd lived for the past 10 years. The contrast between this apartment and their sprawling suburban home wasn't lost on any of us. "Mom," Marcus began, settling onto my worn sofa, "Zariah has told me some disturbing things about what's been happening at her work." "I'm sure she has." I remained standing, my hands clasped behind my back. "What exactly did she tell you?" Zariah leaned forward. Her expression was a careful blend of hurt and determination. "I told him that you've been using your position to humiliate me, that you transferred me to the worst job in the company as punishment for a family disagreement." "A family disagreement?" I repeated the phrase slowly. "Is that what you're calling it, Mom?" Marcus interrupted. "Regardless of what happened at Tommy's birthday, using your business to settle personal scores isn't right. It's not like you." "You're right. It's not like the mother you know, but it's exactly like the CEO I've always been." I moved to the window. I looked out at the city lights. "Tell me, Marcus, what do you know about Zariah's performance at work?" "She's successful. She's ambitious. She's building a career. She's filed 3 complaints against older employees in 18 months. Marcus shifted uncomfortably on the sofa. "She's created a hostile work environment for anyone over 50. She's systematically bullied people she considers beneath her." Zariah's careful composure cracked slightly. "Those were legitimate professional concerns. You told Louise that the kitchen workers don't have the skills or intelligence to do anything better. You called them maintenance." I turned back to face them. "You said Janet Rodriguez probably never finished high school and suggested Maria might be illegal." Marcus's face went pale. "Zariah, is that true?" I was frustrated. People say things when they're under stress. "The same way you say things when you're stressed about dinner parties?" I asked quietly. "The same way you called security to remove the porona from your table." "What does that mean?" Marcus looked between us, confused. "Porona means poor little woman in Spanish," I explained. "It's what your wife called me before having me escorted out of your son's birthday party." The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus stared at Zariah. His face cycled through emotions I recognized from his childhood. The same look he'd worn when he was 7 and realized that Santa Claus wasn't real. "You called my mother a poor little woman?" Zariah's eyes darted around the room like a trapped animal. "Marcus, you have to understand. She showed up looking like... I didn't know who she was." "So that makes it acceptable." His voice was rising now. "No, but what?" His voice was rising now. The careful control he'd maintained for years was finally cracking. "But it's okay to humiliate people if you think they're poor. But it's okay to throw my mother out of our house if she doesn't meet your standards. Marcus, please, you're not understanding." "I'm understanding perfectly." He stood up, pacing to the far end of my small living room. "I'm understanding that my wife threw my mother out of our house because she was embarrassed by her appearance. I'm understanding that she's been bullying older employees at work. I'm understanding that when Mom gave her consequences for her behavior, she ran home to paint herself as the victim." Zariah's mask finally slipped completely. "Your mother has been lying to you. She's been manipulating this entire situation to make me look bad." "How?" The question came out sharp as a blade. "How has she been lying?" She pretended to be a cleaning lady. She spied on me in her own company, observing an employee who'd been the subject of multiple complaints." Marcus turned to me. "Is that true, Mom? About the complaints?" I nodded. 3 formal complaints in 18 months, all dismissed because her supervisor believed she was simply maintaining high standards. Marcus looked back at his wife. I could see the last of his illusions crumbling. "So when you came home every night complaining about how unfairly you were being treated, about how someone was targeting you, you were actually facing consequences for your own behavior?" "Marcus, you don't understand what it's like in that corporate world. Sometimes you have to be tough." "Tough?" His voice broke. You called security on my mother, Zaraya. You humiliated her in front of 20 people. You made our son watch his grandmother get thrown out of his birthday party. I was protecting our family's reputation. From what? From my mother? From the woman who raised me, who worked 3 jobs to put me through college, who never missed a parent-teacher conference or a baseball game. He was shouting now. Years of suppressed resentment were pouring out. You were protecting us from the most decent person I know. Zaria stood up. Her face was flushed with anger and desperation. She's not the saint you think she is. Look where she lives. Look how she dresses. She's an embarrassment. The slap of her words hung in the air like smoke. Marcus stared at her for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was eerily calm. Get out. What? Get out of my mother's apartment. Get out now before I say something I'll regret. Marcus, you can't be serious. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. He moved toward the door, holding it open. Go home. Pack your things. We'll talk about custody arrangements through lawyers. Zaraya looked at me. Her eyes were wild with panic. This is what you wanted, isn't it? You wanted to destroy my marriage. I met her gaze steadily. I wanted you to learn that actions have consequences. I wanted you to understand that treating people with cruelty because you think they're beneath you is unacceptable. I wanted you to develop some basic human decency. Instead, you've destroyed everything. No, Zaraya, you destroyed everything. I continued, my voice low but firm. The moment you decided that my grandson was better off without his grandmother, the moment you chose cruelty over kindness, the moment you made Marcus choose between his wife and his conscience. She looked between Marcus and me one final time. She was searching for something that would save her. Finding nothing, she grabbed her purse and stalked toward the door. This isn't over, she hissed. Yes, I said quietly. It is. After she left, Marcus collapsed into the chair she'd vacated, his head in his hands. We sat in silence for a long time. The weight of 20 years of mistakes settled between us. I'm sorry, Mom, he finally whispered. I'm so sorry for everything. I know you are. How long have you known about who she really is? He asked. I suspected from the beginning, but I hoped I was wrong. I hoped that maybe she would change, that maybe love would make her kinder. He looked up at me. His eyes were red-rimmed. What happens now? Now you rebuild. You focus on being the father Tommy needs. You remember who you are underneath all the compromises you made. And Zaraya? I thought about her options, resignation or continued humiliation in the kitchen of my company. Zaraya will figure out her own path. She always has. Marcus nodded slowly. Can you forgive me for letting her treat you that way? I moved to sit beside him on the sofa, taking his hand in mine. You're my son. There's nothing to forgive. But even as I said the words, I knew that rebuilding trust would take time. Some wounds heal quickly. Others leave scars that change you forever. The reckoning had arrived, but the real work was just beginning. 6 months later, I sat in my office on a crisp autumn morning. I was reviewing the quarterly reports that showed Meridian Technologies' continued growth. The morning light streamed through my windows. It cast long shadows across the mahogany desk, where I'd made so many decisions over the years. Helen knocked and entered with my coffee and the morning mail. Mrs. Morrison, there's a resignation letter on your desk from the Food Services Department. I knew before I opened it. Zaraya's elegant handwriting filled a single page. It was a formal resignation effective immediately. It cited personal reasons and pursuit of new opportunities. No acknowledgement of what she'd learned. No expression of remorse. No growth. Simply an exit strategy that would allow her to preserve whatever remained of her dignity. I signed the acceptance form without hesitation. Some people learn from consequences. Others simply endure them until they find an escape route. Helen, please process this today and send a memo to HR. I want exit interviews to be mandatory for all supervisory positions going forward. No exceptions. The changes I'd implemented over the past 6 months went far beyond one toxic employee. I'd restructured the reporting system so that complaints about workplace bullying came directly to my attention. I'd instituted sensitivity training for all management personnel. Most importantly, I'd promoted Janet Rodriguez to floor supervisor. It was a position where her wisdom and experience were finally valued. Margaret Chen had returned to day shift with a commendation letter in her file. Robert Williams was now leading a project to upgrade our IT infrastructure. His decades of experience were proving invaluable. The culture was changing slowly but steadily. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. Marcus's name appeared on the screen. "Hi, Mom. Are you free for lunch today? Tommy wants to show you something." The relationship with my son had healed gradually. It was like a bone that had been broken and needed time to grow strong again. The divorce had been swift. Zaria had moved back to her parents' house in another state. Apparently, she decided that starting over somewhere else was preferable to facing the consequences of her actions in a town where people knew the truth. Of course, the usual place. I said, "Actually, Tommy wants to have a picnic in the park." I smiled at this new development. What could my grandson possibly want to show me? "He's been practicing something for you," Marcus had said. An hour later, a checkered blanket lay spread beneath the sprawling oak. Tommy, a blur of boundless energy, raced around the playground. His laughter echoed, a joyful sound that bounced on the breeze. Marcus looked different, healthier. The perpetual knot of tension had finally loosened from his shoulders. "Mom, watch this." Tommy's voice rang out clear and bright. He hung upside down from the monkey bars. A 5-year-old's fearless confidence shone in every limb. "Be careful, sweetheart," I called back. My heart swelled, overflowing with a simple joy. The joy of being allowed to worry again. Marcus settled beside me. He began pulling sandwiches from a brown paper bag. "He asks about you every day," he said softly. "When is Grandma coming over? Can Grandma teach me to bake cookies? Can Grandma tell me the princess story?" He paused, his eyes meeting mine. "And what do you tell him?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "That Grandma is busy building castles and slaying dragons." A genuine smile touched his lips, the first I'd seen in years. "He's decided you're the most powerful person he knows." I laughed, watching Tommy navigate the jungle gym with determined focus. "Smart boy," I said. "Too smart sometimes." The laughter faded slightly. A shadow crossed my features. "Last week," I continued, "he asked why Mommy moved away." Marcus's smile vanished. The air grew heavy. I didn't know what to tell him. This was the hardest part. Protecting a child's innocence while holding on to truth. "What did you say?" I prompted gently. He sighed. "I told him that sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, and sometimes those mistakes mean they have to live in different places for a while." Marcus pulled out juice boxes. His movements were slow, deliberate. He handed one to me. He asked if she was coming back. I told him I didn't know. Is that terrible? Should I have been more definitive? I reached over and squeezed his hand. "You told him the truth in a way he could understand. That's all any parent can do." Tommy, flushed and breathless, barreled toward us. "Grandma, come see the castle I built in the sandbox." He tugged at my hand and I let him pull me toward his creation. An elaborate structure of sand and sticks. Any architect would have been impressed by his ambition. As I admired his work, I took in the scene around us. Other families filled the park. Grandparents pushed swings. Parents chased toddlers. The beautiful chaos of ordinary life unfolded. This, I thought, was what I'd been fighting for. Not revenge, not vindication, but the right to be a part of my grandson's world. The right to exist without apology. To be valued for who I was rather than dismissed for who I wasn't. That evening, as Marcus and Tommy drove away, I stood in my small apartment. I looked at the photos that adorned my walls, pictures of Tommy at every stage, Marcus graduating from college, holiday celebrations from before Zaria. But there were new photos now, too, recent snapshots of Tommy and me baking cookies, building blanket forts, reading stories, a life reclaimed. My phone buzzed, a text from Luis, the young man from the kitchen who'd become an unexpected friend. Mrs. Morrison wanted to let you know that Maria's grandson graduated high school today, first in his family to finish. She wanted to thank you for the scholarship program you started. I smiled, typing back. Give her my congratulations. Hard work deserves recognition. The scholarship program had been my latest initiative, funding education for the children and grandchildren of longtime employees, people like Maria. She'd spent 20 years ensuring Meridian Technologies ran smoothly. They deserved to see their families thrive. Another text arrived, this one from Janet Rodriguez. Night shift supervisor position opened up in Building B. Interested in applying? Could use a reference from someone who knows my work ethic. I laughed out loud, typing back, I might know someone who could help with that. As the sun set over the city, casting long shadows across the buildings, I made myself a simple dinner. I settled onto my couch with a book. The apartment was quiet, but it wasn't the oppressive silence of isolation. It was the comfortable quiet of peace. I thought about Zaraya, wherever she was now. I felt something I hadn't anticipated. Not satisfaction in her downfall, but sadness for the opportunities she'd wasted. She could have learned from her experience in the kitchen. She could have developed empathy, grown as a person, rebuilt her relationship with Marcus on a foundation of mutual respect. Instead, she'd chosen to see herself as a victim, to blame others for consequences she'd brought upon herself. Some people spend their entire lives running from accountability, never realizing that the freedom they seek can only come from taking responsibility for their choices. My phone rang one final time. Marcus again. Mom, Tommy wanted me to call and tell you goodnight. He's worried you might be lonely. I heard my grandson's voice in the background, clear and small. Tell Grandma that dragons are scared of the dark, so she should leave the lights on. Tell him I'll leave the lights on, I said, smiling. And Marcus, thank you. For what? For choosing to see the truth when it mattered. After we hung up, I did leave a small light on in the kitchen. Not because I was afraid of dragons, but because Tommy worried about me. And being worried about was a privilege I'd almost lost. I settled into bed that night thinking about power. Not the kind that comes from corporate titles or social status, but the kind that comes from knowing your worth, refusing to accept anything less. The kind that allows you to stand up for yourself and others, even when it's difficult. The kind that comes from choosing dignity over convenience, truth over comfort. Zaraya had thought she understood power. She'd believed it came from putting others down, from climbing social ladders, from marrying into a family she considered beneath her true aspirations. She'd mistaken cruelty for strength, manipulation for intelligence, but real power, the kind that lasts, the kind that builds rather than destroys, comes from lifting others up. It comes from using your position to protect those who can't protect themselves. It comes from understanding that every person has value, regardless of their age, their accent, their education, or their job title. I'd built Meridian Technologies on those principles 35 years ago, and I'd defend them for as long as I drew breath. The next morning, I would wake up and return to my office. I would continue the work of building a company culture based on respect and dignity. I would review applications for the scholarship program, approve promotions for deserving employees, ensure that the mistakes of the past couldn't be repeated. But tonight, I simply slept. The deep, peaceful sleep of someone who had fought for what mattered and won. Not through revenge or retaliation, but through the quiet, persistent application of consequences, and the unwavering belief that everyone deserves to be treated with basic human decency. I had reclaimed my place in my family and my company. I had protected others from the kind of treatment I'd endured. And most importantly, I had shown my grandson that his grandmother was indeed powerful, not because she could hurt people, but because she chose to help them. That was the kind of power worth having, the kind that built legacies instead of tearing them down, the kind that created light instead of darkness, the kind that let you sleep peacefully knowing you'd done the right thing. Now, I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below. And meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until